So we have looked at a number of flat earth viewpoints which were actually different from each other in some interesting ways. All of these thinkers, Thales, Anaximander, Anaximenes, Xenophanes, and Anaxagoras, were smart people. They weren't fools. Even though we might consider their viewpoints to be absurd from today's standpoint, we have to remember that they were among the most intelligent thinkers of that time. And if we were living as their contemporaries, we wouldn't have been able to clearly show that any of them were wrong. I already mentioned that Thales was considered to be among the 7 wise men of ancient Greece. Standing at a later point in history, we can judge and evaluate their views critically, like Aristotle does, but we have to remember that these thinkers stood at the beginning of what will later become the Western intellectual tradition, a complex tradition that will develop and evolve over time to ultimately give rise to modern science. Having looked at a sufficient variety of flat earth viewpoints, let's now move forward a little in time to find out what made some of the ancient Greeks start thinking that the earth was not flat but spherical. We don't exactly know who was the first person among the Greeks to claim that the earth is spherical. There are conflicting reports about that in the Greek tradition itself. According to Diogenes Laertes, a 3rd century CE biographer of famous Greek thinkers, we are told that he, Pythagoras, was the first to call the earth spherical, though Theophrastus says that it was Parmenides and Zeno says that it was Hesiod. So in this work called Lives and Opinions of Eminent Philosophers, Diogenes mentions 3 people who are said to have first called the earth spherical: Pythagoras, a philosopher and religious leader after whom the Pythagorean theorem is named; Parmenides, another philosopher; and an ancient poet, Hesiod. We cannot be sure who actually first posited the earth is spherical, although historians think it wouldn't be surprising if Pythagoras or one of his followers was that person. But the first writer whose work survives, clearly stating the earth is spherical and also giving arguments in support of it, is Aristotle. We have already seen several passages from his work called On the Heavens, in which Aristotle explains the flat earth views of various thinkers. But Aristotle's purpose in doing so was not to say that those views were correct, but to reject those views after stating them. Aristotle was convinced that the earth is a sphere, and he must have been familiar with the arguments that were offered by the thinkers prior to him in defense of a spherical earth. What we want to do is look at some of the observational data and the arguments that are presented by Aristotle and other Greek writers after him. I don't expect that you would be familiar with this data or these arguments unless you've already read about them somewhere. I will assume that you believe that the earth is flat. We've already seen that this was a reasonable belief to have if we were living in that time. So take a look at the observational data used by the Greeks that I'm going to present and try to think about whether that data is compatible with a flat earth. If it's not compatible with a flat earth, think about what possible shapes the earth could have in order for that data to be observed, and see if you get convinced at the end that the earth must be a sphere.